"You must submit to your husband as unto the Lord," Pastor Brennan declared from his mahogany desk, his fingers steepled in false concern. "Marriage requires sacrifice, especially from wives. Perhaps if you were more obedient, Marlowe, your husband wouldn't need to seek fulfillment elsewhere." I sat perfectly still in his office, my hands folded in my lap, watching him deliver this pronouncement with absolute confidence. Beside me, my husband Quentin nodded solemnly, playing the repentant sinner seeking guidance. The same Quentin who had been systematically draining our accounts to fund an apartment for his mistress. The same man who thought I knew nothing. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I simply smiled and said, "Thank you for your counsel, Pastor." What neither of them knew was that 3 weeks ago, I had discovered everything. And unlike them, I had been preparing. My name is Nora Calloway. I'm 41 years old, and for 18 years, I had been the model pastor's wife everyone expected. I taught Sunday school, organized church fundraisers, and smiled through every criticism disguised as spiritual guidance. Quentin and I had built what looked like a perfect life. He worked as the church's financial administrator, managing donations and budgets. I ran a small accounting firm from home, quietly successful, while he took credit for our financial stability during dinner parties. We had no children. After years of failed treatments, we'd accepted this reality differently. I found peace in mentoring young women at church. Quentin found resentment, claiming I was incomplete as a woman. 3 weeks ago, while reconciling our joint account, I noticed irregular transfers. Small amounts at first, then increasingly bold. My training kicked in immediately. I didn't confront him. I investigated. The transfers led to an account under Quentin's name alone. Within days, I had traced apartment lease payments, jewelry purchases, and restaurant charges that coincided with his claimed evening prayer meetings. Then I found her name, Bridget Summers, 26 years old, new to our congregation. The same woman who had tearfully approached me last month seeking marriage advice, calling me her mentor. The betrayal should have shattered me. Instead, it clarified everything. Years of subtle control, of being told my career ambitions were worldly, of watching Quentin accept praise for my ideas suddenly made sense. I could have confronted them immediately, but I had spent 18 years learning patience. I would use it now. I opened a separate bank account at a different institution. I quietly moved my business income there, leaving just enough in our joint account to avoid suspicion. I consulted an attorney named Wesley Hunt, recommended by a former client. His office was 40 miles away, far from anyone who might recognize me. "Do you have documentation?" he asked after hearing my situation. I handed him a folder containing transaction records, timestamps, and screenshots of text messages I'd found on Quentin's tablet. He'd been careless, never imagining I would look. Wesley reviewed everything carefully. "Your husband has access to church funds in his position. Have you checked those accounts?" The question stopped me cold. I hadn't considered that possibility. "I handle the church's quarterly audit reports," I said slowly. "I could review them." "Do it carefully," Wesley advised. "If there are irregularities, document everything but don't confront anyone yet. We need to build an airtight case." That night, I accessed the church financial records I reviewed every quarter. The discrepancies were subtle but unmistakable once I knew what to look for. Small amounts redirected from the building fund. Donation checks deposited but recorded at lower amounts. Over 3 years, Quentin had embezzled nearly $80,000. My hands trembled as I documented everything. This wasn't just adultery. This was theft from people who trusted him, who gave sacrificially thinking they were supporting God's work. I printed copies, saved files to encrypted drives, and kept my expression neutral when Quentin came home that evening. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing my cheek with practiced affection. "Productive," I replied truthfully. "Very productive." He smiled, oblivious. "I have a late meeting Thursday, church finance committee." "Of course," I said. "I'll keep dinner warm." Thursday was when he usually met Bridget. I had his schedule memorized now. The following Sunday, Bridget approached me after service, her eyes wide with manufactured innocence. "Sister Nora, could we meet for coffee? I really need your advice about something." I smiled warmly. "Of course, dear. How about Tuesday afternoon?" She hugged me, and I felt nothing but cold calculation. Let her think she was deceiving me. Let them both feel secure. That afternoon, Quentin announced he wanted to discuss something important. We sat in our living room, the space we decorated together years ago when we still believed in our future. "Pastor Brennan thinks we should consider counseling," he said carefully, "to work on our marriage." "What's wrong with our marriage?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. He hesitated, then delivered his rehearsed speech about feeling disconnected, about how my career had created distance between us. I agreed to counseling, knowing exactly where this was leading. Our first session with Pastor Brennan confirmed my suspicions. He focused entirely on my supposed failures as a wife. My career made me too independent. My lack of children meant I wasn't fulfilling my biblical purpose. My education made me prideful. Quentin sat beside me, nodding sadly at each criticism. "A wife should be her husband's helpmate," Pastor Brennan intoned, "not his competitor." I absorbed every word, my expression appropriately humble. Inside, I was documenting everything for the inevitable moment when truth would surface. "I want to be better," I said softly. "Please tell me how." Pastor Brennan smiled, pleased by my submission. "Pray more, work less. Focus on your home and husband. Let Quentin lead as God intended." I agreed to everything. Meanwhile, I had already contacted the State Financial Crimes Division about the embezzlement, providing preliminary documentation. Tuesday's coffee meeting with Bridget was enlightening. She spent an hour describing her situation with a married man, seeking my advice while carefully avoiding names. "He says his wife doesn't understand him," she confided, "that she's too focused on her career to appreciate him." I nodded sympathetically. Marriage is complicated, but deception always causes harm, even when intentions seem good. She looked uncomfortable. But what if they're meant to be together? What if his marriage was a mistake? "Then he should have the courage to be honest," I replied calmly. "Sneaking around shows character, doesn't it? If he'll betray his wife." "What makes you think he won't eventually betray you?" The color drained from her face. I sipped my tea, letting the words sink in. "I should go," she mumbled, gathering her things. "Anytime you need guidance, I'm here," I said warmly. Let her think about that. That evening, Quentin came home agitated. "Did you talk to Bridget today?" "Yes, we had coffee. She's struggling with something. I tried to help." I paused. "Why?" "No reason, just wondering." But his tension was obvious. The next Sunday, Pastor Brennan requested another meeting. This time, he had specific demands. "I think you should close your business," he announced. "Focus fully on supporting Quentin and serving the church." My business, the one I'd built from nothing, the one currently generating 70% of our household income. "That's a significant decision," I said carefully. "Can I pray about it?" "Of course, but understand that God's design for marriage requires wives to follow their husband's leadership. Quentin agrees this would strengthen your relationship." I looked at Quentin, who couldn't meet my eyes. "I see." That night, I couldn't sleep. 18 years of my life had been built on what I thought was partnership. Now I saw it clearly. Control disguised as spiritual guidance, manipulation wrapped in biblical language. I rose quietly and went to my office. By dawn, I had completed documentation of every irregular transaction in the church accounts, every personal withdrawal, every falsified record. I also drafted a detailed letter to the church board, explaining everything I'd discovered. I wouldn't send it yet, but it was ready. Wesley called that afternoon. "The Financial Crimes Division wants to meet with you. They're very interested in your documentation." "When?" I asked. "Thursday morning. Can you make it?" Thursday, when Quentin would be with Bridget, believing I was safely at home being obedient. "I'll be there," I said. The meeting with investigators lasted 3 hours. I presented everything methodically: transaction records, falsified reports, the pattern of theft spanning 3 years. "This is exceptional documentation," Detective Sterling commented. "How did you compile this without him knowing?" "I handle the church's audit reports quarterly," I explained. Once I knew what to look for, the irregularities were clear. I have copies of everything, including his personal account statements showing deposits matching the missing church funds. They asked detailed questions about Quinton's access, the church's oversight procedures, and Pastor Brennan's involvement. I answered everything truthfully. "We'll need to conduct our own investigation," Detective Sterling said finally. "This will likely result in criminal charges. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about 18 years of being diminished, controlled, and manipulated. "Yes, I'm prepared." That evening, Quinton seemed nervous. "How was your day?" "Enlightening," I replied honestly. The following Sunday, Pastor Brennan called me to his office alone. Quinton wasn't invited this time. "Sister Nora, I'm concerned about your attitude," he began. "Quinton says you're being resistant to guidance. That's troubling." I sat quietly, hands folded. "Marriage requires submission from wives. It's biblical. If you continue down this path of independence, you're risking your marriage and your soul." "And what about husbands who steal?" I asked softly. "What about spiritual leaders who enable adultery? Are those biblical?" His face reddened. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying anything. I'm simply asking questions about biblical standards. Surely they apply to everyone." "This meeting is over. I think you need to examine your heart and repent of your rebellious spirit." I stood. "Thank you for your time, Pastor." As I left, I saw Bridget waiting outside his office. Interesting. That evening, Quinton confronted me. "Pastor Brennan says you're being disrespectful. What did you say to him?" "I asked about biblical standards for husbands and leaders," I replied calmly. "Why? Is that inappropriate?" "You're twisting things. He's trying to help us, and you're making it difficult." I studied my husband. When had he become this stranger? Or had he always been this person, and I'd been too devoted to see it? "I've been thinking," I said carefully. "Maybe we should separate for a while, give each other space to reflect." His eyes widened with something like panic. "Separate? Nora, that's extreme. We just need to work through this." "Work through what, exactly?" I asked. "You haven't actually told me what I'm doing wrong beyond having a career and opinions." "This is exactly what I mean. You're being difficult and argumentative. That's not who you used to be." "Maybe I'm finally becoming who I actually am," I replied. Monday morning, I received a call from Wesley. "The investigators want to move forward. They have enough evidence to proceed with charges against your husband. They're also looking into potential liability for the church leadership." "How long before they make arrests?" I asked. "Could be any day now. They're building the case carefully. Are you ready?" Was I ready? Ready to watch my marriage publicly dissolve? Ready to face the congregation's judgment? Ready to be blamed for not being submissive enough to prevent my husband's crimes? "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm ready." That afternoon, I transferred the remaining funds from our joint account into my separate account. Everything except what Quinton had deposited this month. Let him have that. The rest was my income anyway. I also changed the locks on my office door and updated my business accounts to remove his access. Small steps toward separation. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. Bridget appeared at my door, her eyes red from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I let her in, curious about this development. "I can't do this anymore," she burst out. "Quinton told me you were cold and distant, that your marriage was over in everything but name. He said you didn't love him anymore." I remained silent, letting her continue. "But you've been nothing but kind to me. And the things you said at coffee about character and betrayal, I can't stop thinking about them. I feel horrible." "So end it," I said simply. "I tried. He said he's going to leave you anyway, that we're meant to be together. But Sister Nora, he lies so easily to you. How do I know he's not lying to me too? You don't, I replied. That's the point. Character reveals itself in crisis. How someone treats others shows who they truly are. She left shortly after, and I wondered if this development would accelerate Quentin's timeline. It didn't matter. Mine was already set. Wednesday morning brought the moment I'd been anticipating. Detective Sterling and 2 officers arrived at our church during morning service. I wasn't there. I decided to attend service elsewhere that morning, establishing my own independence. But my phone exploded with messages within minutes. They arrested Quentin at church. Police took him out in handcuffs. What's happening? I silenced my phone and focused on the service at my new church, a small congregation where no one knew me. The pastor spoke about truth and justice. It felt like confirmation. By the time I returned home, news crews were parked outside. I drove past a coffee shop where Wesley met me. It's done, he said. Quentin's been charged with embezzlement and fraud. The church is scrambling. Pastor Brennan is claiming ignorance, but investigators are questioning his oversight. What happens now? I asked. Now we file for divorce and let the criminal case proceed separately. The divorce papers were served Thursday morning while Quentin was being arraigned. His bail was set high, given the amount stolen and his access to church funds. His mother called me, screaming. How could you do this to him? To our family? What kind of wife betrays her husband? The kind whose husband stole from a church and kept a mistress, I replied calmly. The kind who refuses to be blamed for someone else's choices. You're bitter and vindictive. Pastor Brennan said you were rebellious, that you refused to submit. If you'd been a proper wife, none of this would have happened. Goodbye, Alina, I said, ending the call. Within hours, social media erupted with opinions. Some supported me. Many blamed me for not standing by my husband. Several women from church posted about wifely submission and forgiveness. I posted nothing. My attorney had advised silence, but more than that, I felt no need to justify myself to people who had already decided I was wrong. Friday brought an unexpected development. 3 women from church requested to meet with me privately. I agreed, curious about their intentions. They arrived at my home looking uncomfortable. The oldest, Patricia Morrison, spoke first. We owe you an apology. We've been part of the church culture that pressured you to ignore red flags and blame yourself. The others nodded. One of them, younger, perhaps 30, spoke up. I've been in a similar situation. My husband was controlling, and when I sought help from church leadership, they told me to pray more and submit better. Your situation made me realize I need to leave too. We talked for 2 hours. They shared stories of manipulation disguised as spiritual guidance, of being told their careers made them prideful, of systematic diminishment in the name of biblical womanhood. What you did took courage, Patricia said as they left. You showed us it's possible to choose yourself. The church board requested a meeting with me the following Tuesday. I brought Wesley despite their protests. This is a private church matter, Board Chairman Vincent Hayes insisted. Mrs. Calloway is facing divorce proceedings, Wesley replied smoothly. Any discussion of church matters involving her husband requires legal representation. They reluctantly agreed. For an hour, they tried to pressure me to drop the criminal charges, claiming it would damage the church's reputation. Quentin's actions damaged the church's reputation, I replied calmly. I simply reported the truth. If the truth is damaging, perhaps the problem isn't the truth. But as his wife, you could show Christian forgiveness, Vincent argued. Drop the charges, let the church handle this internally. No, I said simply. Theft is theft. Adultery is adultery. My marriage to him doesn't obligate me to enable his crimes or accept my own mistreatment. Pastor Brennan, who had been silent, finally spoke. You're being selfish and vindictive. This isn't about justice. It's about revenge because your pride was hurt. I met his gaze steadily. My pride wasn't hurt, Pastor. My trust was betrayed and my intelligence was insulted. There's a difference. The hearing for Quentin's bail reduction happened Thursday. I attended, sitting quietly in the back. His attorney painted him as a devoted husband corrupted by temptation, a good man who made mistakes. The prosecutor presented my documentation showing systematic, calculated theft over 3 years. When asked if I'd like to speak, I declined. The evidence spoke clearly enough. Bail was denied reduction. Quentin would remain in custody until trial. As I left the courthouse, I spotted Bridget outside. She looked devastated. "He told me this was your fault," she said when she saw me. "That you turned him in out of spite, but I've been reading the reports. He stole from the church, from people who trusted him." "Yes, he did," I confirmed. "I was so stupid," she whispered. "I thought he loved me. I thought we had something special. But he was just using me, wasn't he?" "Probably," I said, not unkindly. "But you're young. You'll recover and make better choices. We all make mistakes." The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Quentin's criminal charges made the asset division straightforward. The court froze his accounts pending trial, and my documentation of separate finances protected my business and savings. His attorney tried arguing that I should support him financially during his legal troubles, given that I was the primary earner. The judge dismissed that immediately after reviewing evidence of the embezzlement and adultery. "Mr. Calloway made choices that destroyed his marriage and his freedom," the judge stated. "His wife has no obligation to fund his defense." 3 months after his arrest, our divorce was finalized. I kept my business, my savings, and my home. Quentin kept nothing but his legal problems. The church asked me to return as bookkeeper, promising better oversight. I declined. They needed to rebuild their systems properly, not depend on me to fix what they'd allowed to break. Instead, I accepted a position with a nonprofit organization, helping women escape financial abuse. My experience had given me unique insight. Quentin's trial happened 6 months after his arrest. I testified about the financial irregularities I'd discovered, presenting the documentation methodically. The prosecution built an airtight case. He was convicted on 12 counts of embezzlement and fraud. Sentencing was set for 3 weeks later. Before sentencing, he requested to speak with me. Against my better judgment, I agreed, meeting him in a monitored room at the detention center. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, "for everything. The stealing, the affair, the way I treated you. I was trying to be someone I wasn't, and I destroyed everything." I studied him, looking for sincerity. Perhaps it was there. Perhaps prison had created space for actual reflection. "I accept your apology," I said finally. "But that doesn't change what happened or what you did. You made choices, Quentin, consistently, for years." "I know. I just wanted you to know I regret them. You deserved better." "Yes, I did," I agreed. There seemed nothing else to say. Quentin received 8 years in prison. Pastor Brennan was removed from leadership after an investigation revealed he'd known about financial irregularities but failed to report them. The church split, with about half the congregation leaving to form a new community with different leadership. I attended neither. I'd found my new church home, a place where questions were welcomed and women's voices valued. My business grew steadily. The publicity from the case, while initially uncomfortable, brought clients who specifically wanted someone ethical handling their finances. I hired 2 assistants and moved into a proper office space. The women I'd met that Friday became close friends. We supported each other through divorces, career changes, and the process of rebuilding lives that had been constrained by manipulation disguised as spirituality. 1 year after walking out of Pastor Brennan's office, I gave my first public talk about financial abuse in religious settings. The room was packed. "Spiritual language can be weaponized," I told the audience. "Submission, obedience, and sacrifice are beautiful concepts when chosen freely within healthy relationships. But when they're demanded by those in power to maintain control, they become tools of abuse." I shared my story carefully, focusing not on revenge but on recognition and response. How small signs built into patterns. How documentation protected me. How choosing myself wasn't selfish but necessary. After the talk, dozens of women approached me with their own stories. Many were still trapped, seeking advice on how to prepare. I connected them with resources, attorneys, and support systems. "You saved my life," one woman told me tearfully. "I thought I was crazy for questioning my marriage. Your story showed me I wasn't." That made everything worthwhile. The judgment, the public scrutiny, the loss of my church community. If my experience helped others escape, then something good had emerged from pain. 2 years after that meeting in Pastor Brennan's office, I stood in my new townhouse, smaller than the home I'd shared with Quentin, but entirely mine. My business thrived. My calendar was filled with speaking engagements. My friendships were genuine, built on mutual respect rather than church obligation. I'd learned that walking away isn't rebellion. It's sometimes the most faithful thing you can do. Faithful to truth, to justice, to the person God created you to be before others tried to diminish you into their idea of submission. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. "Coffee tomorrow. Want to hear about my new job?" I smiled, typing back my confirmation. These women who had found courage through shared struggle had become family. The evening sun streamed through my window, warming a space that held no secrets, no lies, no pretense of perfection. Just honest, hard-won peace. I had walked away from everything familiar, and in doing so, I'd walked toward everything true. That, I'd learned, was worth any cost.